Hello. Today we're going to be learning about the third declension, which is a family of nouns in Latin. Before we do that, take a moment and see if you can figure out what all these images have to do with the Latin third declension. At various points in this video, I'm going to be asking you to stop and think, which means pause the video and take as much time as you need to answer the question that I've asked you. So, stop and think. What do all of these images have to do with the Latin third declension? Play the video when you're ready to hear the answers. Alright, so what do all these images have in common? Well, if you figured out that they all represent Latin third declension nouns, very, very well done. We have novice, mons, rex, mors, flumen, and herbs, which translate to ship, mountain, king, death, river, and city. Okay, so before we talk about the third declension, let's ask what is a noun declension in the first place. In the simplest possible terms, a declension is a group of nouns that shares common traits. This breaks down into three main categories. Firstly, nouns of a declension often share the same stems. We can see this in the first declension, where nouns share an A stem ending in A, like ancilla and puella. This is the basic part of the noun that we will then go on to add endings to. Secondly, nouns of a declension often share the same gender. This means they may all be masculine, feminine, or neuter, or some combination of those three. Thirdly, nouns of the same declension often decline in a similar way. You might notice that to decline is where we get the word declension from. This means that nouns will change their ending according to patterns to show us what the case of the noun is in a Latin sentence, and thereby what job it's doing in that sentence. So nouns of a declension are going to decline in a similar way to show the job of that noun in the sentence that you're looking at. Okay, so let's see if you can remember what our first and second declensions look like and what they have in common in Latin. So, let's look at the first declension. As I mentioned already, nouns of the first declension share a stem in A. We've got taberna, shop, insula, island, cena, dinner, and many, many more. Nouns of the first declension are usually feminine, but there are some masculine nouns like agricola, farmer, or poeta, poet, and they tend to be professions. They also share common endings. They decline in the same way. As for the second declension, there are a few different stem patterns that nouns of the second declension might share. We've got nouns like annus, year, and servus, slave, which have stems in US, and also nouns ending in er or r, like ager, field, or vir, man. Both these types of nouns tend to be masculine. However, in the second declension, we also have nouns like regnum, kingdom, or imperium, power. These nouns with stems in are neuter. So nouns of the second declension can be masculine or neuter, but it's pretty easy to spot the difference between these two groups, as we've just seen. They also share a very consistent set of endings. They decline in a similar way. When it comes to the third declension, we can see there is a massive variety in the noun stems that we have. Vox, iter, herbs, and comes all look a little bit different. You should also be aware that nouns of the third declension can be masculine, feminine, or neuter. The one thing they do consistently is that they share the same endings. They decline in the same way to show the case of these nouns. So just to recap, nouns of the first declension end in A, like ancilla and puella, and they are mostly feminine, but some are masculine, and these tend to be professions. Nouns of the second declension end in US, er, or indeed just r, or like servus, puer, and bellum, and they tend to be either masculine, if they end in US, er, or r, or neuter if they end in um. Nouns of the third declension, as we said, have a wide variety of stems, but they often end in a consonant, like rex, dux, or mercator. And these nouns can be masculine, feminine, or neuter. Okay, so we're going to have a knowledge check, and you're going to try and answer these questions and play the video when you're ready to hear the answers. So, can you translate these nouns and identify the declension that they belong to? Stop and think, and play the video again when you're ready to hear the answers. Okay, so vox is voice, deus is God, proelium is battle, clamor is shout, custos is guard, ager is field, porta is gate, regina is queen, civis is citizen, and hora is hour. As for the declensions of these nouns, you can see them now displayed on the screen. Please correct your work and make a note of any nouns that confused you. Once you're familiar with your first and second declension, you can assume that nouns that don't conform to these patterns are going to belong to the third declension. Well done if you managed to figure these out. Okay, one thing we have to be aware of with our nouns of the third declension is they often undergo a stem change, and we're going to look at what that means and what that looks like now. My top tip to you before we begin is that you should always learn the nominative and the genitive of any new nouns to avoid confusion. This is the way nouns are presented in your GCSE vocab list, in textbooks and in dictionaries. You'll see an example here with herbs, urbis, meaning city, and so you shouldn't just learn herbs, you should also learn the genitive urbis to help you out. Okay, so you'll see here a list of third declension nouns: herbs, senex, vox, miles, custos, ars, and nox. All of these change their stems. So we've seen with herbs already the stem changes to herb, hence we have herbis and not herbsis in the genitive. And that's all we mean by a stem change. Senex, old man, will change its stem to sen. Vox will change to voc. Miles will change to milit. Custos will change to custod. Ars will change to art. And nox will change to noct. Now, you might wonder how you can remember all of these, and I'm going to give you a little tip here. A lot of these change stems will give us words we are already familiar with in English. So here from herbs, herb, we have urban. From senex, sen, we have senile. From vox, meaning voice, voc, we have vocal. From miles, soldier, millet, we have military. From custos, guard, custode, we have custody. From ars, art, we have artist. From nox, noct, night, we have nocturnal. And so just remember, you're already aware of a lot of these stems and a lot of these parts of the nouns by way of our English derivatives. So you really do know them already, and these aren't a list of strange word forms that you need to learn from scratch. Okay, let's see how you got on with some more third declension nouns with changing stems. Do you know how these third declension nouns change stem? And can you give an English derivative from those changed stems? Stop and think, make a note of your answers, and play the video when you're ready to see the correct responses. Alright, so lux, meaning light, will change its stem to look. Frater, meaning brother, will change its stem to fratre. Nomen, meaning name, will change its stem to nomin. Caput, meaning head, will change its stem to capit. Iter, meaning journey, will change its stem to itiner. And our derivatives. From lux, we get translucent. so something that will allow light to pass through. Frater, we get fratricide, meaning the murder of a brother. From nomen nomen, we get to nominate, so to put your name forward for something. From caput capit, we get capital, so the head city of a country. And from iter, journey, we get itinerary, so a schedule of places that a person is going to visit. Well done if you managed to get those right. Okay, finally, let's have a look at the endings for our noun declensions. You should already be familiar with the endings for first and second declension on the screen. If you're not, please do make a note. Then we also see our third declension endings. I've separated them into masculine or feminine endings in the first column and neuter endings in the second column. You'll see that these are very, very similar, except for the fact that neuter nouns will always be the same in their nominative and accusative. So nominative and accusative singular, we won't add an ending in the third declension, and for nominative and accusative plural, our ending will end in A. I've left out the vocative because the vocative of these nouns will be exactly the same as the nominative in both the singular and the plural. You'll also see in the genitive plural, I've got an I in brackets. This is because some nouns add the genitive plural ending and some add the genitive plural ending ium. Please don't worry about which keep the I and which don't. It's just remembering and then if it has an ium, you're aware that it's still genitive plural, third declension. I've also underlined the dative singular and genitive plural endings because these look a little bit like endings from other declensions. So our dative singular ending of I looks a little bit like the genitive singular or nominative plural in the second declension. Likewise, our genitive plural or ium in the third declension could look a little bit like the accusative singular in the second declension. This is why it's really, really important to be aware of the declension of your noun so you can establish what case it is in when you meet them in context. Okay, so bearing in mind the form of our nouns in the third declension and our endings that are there for you on the left, how do we add these endings to these nouns without getting tripped up? I'm going to show you. So we have the noun rex, regis, so we have our stem change to reg, meaning king. Again, that stem change is really, really easy to remember because from the stem reg we get words like regal or regent and many, many more. So let's look at it in all the different cases as we add on the endings. So in the nominative singular, we have rex. Then we're going to have our stem change and we will get reg-m in the accusative singular. That changed stem will then continue for the rest of the cases of the noun. So we get genitive singular regis, dative singular regi, ablative singular rege. Then in the plural, we will continue along the same patterns and we will have reges, reges, regum, regibus, and regibus. So our stem changes from the accusative singular onwards and we continue with that change stem for the rest of the cases. Let's try it with another noun. Okay, so we have the noun herbs, herbis, city, which is feminine, and we know our stem changes to herb by looking at our genitive plural. Our genitive singular, herbis. Okay, so let's see how this goes down through all of the cases. So we have our nominative singular, herbs. Now we're going to have our stem change. See if you know what's coming. We'll have our accusative singular, herbem. Good. Okay, genitive singular, herbis, dative singular, herbi, and ablative singular, herbe. And very simple, in the plural we'll continue with those changed stems. So we have herbes, herbes, herbium, herbibus, and herbibus. Like I said, do not worry about which ones have eum and which ones have in the genitive plural, but herbs is one that has eum as opposed to So again, we've continued from the accusative singular onwards with our changed stem of herb. Alright, let's look at a neuter noun. So here we have flumen, fluminis, meaning river, and by looking at our genitive singular, fluminis, we know that our stem is going to change to flumin. Okay, we're going to use our neuter endings here. And just like I told you, neuter is going to be the same in the nominative and accusative singular, as you'll see from the table. So, we get nominative singular flumen, accusative singular will again be flumen. For neuter nouns, the stem will change from the genitive singular onwards, because, as I said, the nominative and accusative singular must be the same. So then we get fluminis, dative singular flumini, and ablative singular flumine. And then in the plural, we know our nominative and accusative plural of neuter nouns will end in a. So we have flumina, flumina, and then continuing on with our regular endings, fluminum, fluminibus, and fluminibus. So again, very, very similar to our masculine and feminine nouns, except that the changes to stem will not occur until the genitive singular, and we just need to be aware of those neuter plural endings in a for the nominative and accusative plural. If you're unsure whether a noun in the third declension is masculine, feminine, or neuter, just consult a dictionary or your vocab list and it'll state the gender of the noun there. Alright, so another knowledge check. What you're going to do, now that you're aware of how our stems change and how we add on endings, you are going to try and change the case of the nouns in the blue box to the case I've given you in brackets, and you're going to try and tell me what the case of the nouns in the green box are. Stop and think and play the video again when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, so amor in the dative singular will be amori. Homo, man, in the ablative plural will be hominibus. Mater, mother, in the genitive singular will be matris. Flumen, in the nominative plural, will be flumina, as it's neuter, and uxor, wife, in the accusative singular, will be uxorem. As for the nouns in the green box, tempestates, storms, could be nominative or accusative plural. Tempore, time, from tempus, must be in the ablative singular. Nominum, from nomen, name, must be in the genitive plural. Genti, meaning family or tribe, must be in the dative singular. And navis, meaning ship, could be in the nominative or genitive singular. The word navis already ends in is, which is why its nominative and genitive are the same. Very well done if you managed to get all of these right. Okay, and some final thoughts and advice on the third declension. Always remember to check your vocab list if you're unsure of the declension of any noun. As we've said already, if the genitive ends in is, for example, if the noun is given as herbs, herbis, you know it must be in the third declension. Secondly, remember to pay attention to the stem changes we looked at in this video, and bear in mind that English derivatives, many words we already know in English, can help us to remember some of these stem changes. Lastly, always be careful with endings that look like endings from more than one declension, as we already examined in the endings section of this video. Take your time. Remember to ask yourself what declension the nouns belong to before attempting to translate them in context. I hope you found this helpful and are now more confident tackling nouns of the third declension. Thank you and valete.